If you look at what just happened between Washington and Ottawa, this isn't a negotiation. This isn't even a disagreement. This is an ultimatum meeting a wall. For decades, the economic relationship between the United States and Canada was the envy of the world. Seamless, integrated, mutually beneficial. But as of this morning, that relationship is on life support. Donald Trump just demanded $500 billion from Canada, not over 10 years, not as part of a phased agreement. Immediately, he wants it now. He wants it in concessions, in market access, in resource guarantees, and in what his team is calling balance of trade corrections. He went on Truth Social and laid it out like an invoice, like Canada owes him money, like a neighbor who suddenly decides you've been underpaying rent for 30 years and hands you a bill at breakfast. Mark Carney looked at that bill. He read every line, and then he did something that sent shockwaves through every embassy, every trading floor, and every war room in the Western world. He tore it up, not figuratively, politically, strategically, publicly. He didn't just reject the demand, he dismantled it. And the way he did it just shook Washington to its foundation. Trump is scrambling, the markets are reacting, and the so-called experts on cable news are completely missing what's actually happening here. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what Trump demanded and why this single exchange may have just redrawn the economic map of North America. So let's start at the beginning, because the $500 billion number didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of frustration. President Trump has been hammering the trade deficit with Canada for months. He's been pointing to Canadian lumber, Canadian energy, Canadian metals, and saying America is getting ripped off. His team put together a document, a wish list really, that calculated every perceived imbalance, every tariff asymmetry, every market restriction that benefits Canadian producers over American ones. They added it all up, they inflated the timeline, they padded the numbers, and they arrived at $500 billion. That is the figure the White House says Canada owes for decades of unfair trade practices. Now, any economist will tell you that number is fantasy. Trade deficits don't work like credit card debt. You don't get to just send a bill. But Trump doesn't care about economic theory. He cares about the headline. And the headline was exactly what he wanted. Trump demands $500 billion from Canada. It played beautifully on Fox. It lit up his base. It made him look like the tough guy finally holding the freeloaders accountable. There was just one problem. He sent that demand to the wrong guy. Mark Carney is not Justin Trudeau. He's not going to smile and nod and promise to work things out over a round of golf. Carney looked at that $500 billion demand, and he didn't just say no. He held a press conference that will be studied in political science classes for the next 50 years. He stood at the podium in Ottawa, calm as a surgeon, and he said, "The United States is our partner, not our landlord. Canada does not pay tribute. We do not accept invoices from foreign governments, and we will not be bullied by fantasy accounting." That line, that single line, it landed like a cruise missile in Washington. Within minutes, it was trending globally. Within an hour, European leaders were sharing it. Within 2 hours, the White House press office had to hold an emergency briefing to respond, and their response, it was chaos. Trump fired back immediately, calling Carney a failed banker and a puppet of the global elite. He threatened to impose an immediate 50% tariff on all Canadian goods, not 25%. 50. He said Canada would pay one way or another. But here's the thing. While Trump was raging on social media, the markets were already delivering their verdict. And the verdict was devastating for the White House. Let me show you the receipts. Receipt number 1, the bond market reaction. Within 45 minutes of Carney's press conference, US Treasury yields spiked. That means investors started pricing in instability. They looked at Trump's $500 billion demand, and they didn't see strength. They saw recklessness. They saw a president who was willing to blow up the largest bilateral trade relationship on earth for a political headline. The bond market is the one thing that doesn't lie. It doesn't care about your tweets. It doesn't care about your rallies. It prices in risk. And yesterday, it priced in the risk that Donald Trump might actually be serious. That sent a shiver through every portfolio manager in New York. Receipt number 2, the auto sector meltdown. This is where it gets personal for Trump's base. The American auto industry is not American, it's North American. A single vehicle made by General Motors crosses the US-Canada border up to 8 times during production. Engines are machined in Ontario. Transmissions are assembled in Michigan. Wiring harnesses come from Quebec. Electronics from Ohio. It's one machine spread across 2 countries. When Trump threatened 50% tariffs, Ford stock dropped 4% in a single afternoon. GM dropped 3.5%. Stellantis, which operates Chrysler, dropped 5%. The Detroit Big Three weren't panicking about Canada. They were panicking about their own survival. You put a 50% tariff on that border, and you don't hurt Ottawa. You kill Dearborn. You kill Oshawa. You kill every small parts supplier in Indiana and Wisconsin that depends on cross-border integration. We're getting reports that CEOs from all 3 automakers requested emergency calls with the White House. They were told the president was unavailable. He was on Truth Social, calling Carney names. While his own industrial base was on fire, the president was tweeting receipt number 3, the energy card. This is the one that should terrify every American watching this. Canada supplies more energy to the United States than any other country on Earth, more than Saudi Arabia, more than all of OPEC combined. The pipelines that feed the American Midwest, the refineries in Texas and Louisiana that process heavy crude, the natural gas that heats homes in Minnesota and Wisconsin. It comes from Canada. 60% of US crude imports flow south from Alberta. When Carney gave that press conference, he didn't mention energy directly. He didn't have to. He said one sentence that every energy trader on the planet understood immediately. He said, "Canada will ensure its resources serve its national interest first." That's it. That's all he had to say. Within 90 minutes, West Texas Intermediate crude jumped $6 a barrel. Natural gas futures spiked. Energy stocks on the TSX in Toronto surged while their American counterparts wobbled. Carney didn't threaten to cut off the oil. He didn't have to. He just reminded everyone that he could, and the market did the rest. That is what $500 billion in demands gets you when the other side controls your energy supply. It gets you a gas price spike that hits every voter in every swing state Trump needs to win. Receipt number 4, the international response. This is the part that should worry Washington the most, because while Trump was throwing punches at Ottawa, the rest of the world was picking up the phone. Sources in Brussels say that European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called Carney within 3 hours of his press conference. The UK Prime Minister's office issued a statement expressing deep concern about unilateral trade demands that undermine the rules-based international order. Japan's Trade Ministry released a one-line statement that said more than any speech could, Japan stands with its partners who uphold multilateral trade principles. Do you understand what just happened? Trump demanded $500 billion from Canada, and the entire developed world rallied behind Ottawa, not behind Washington, behind Ottawa. Carney didn't just reject Trump's demand, he turned it into a recruitment tool. He used Trump's overreach to build a coalition. Every country that has ever been threatened by a Trump tariff, every nation that has ever been called a freeloader or a cheater, they all saw Carney stand up and say no. And they all thought the same thing. If Canada can say no, maybe we can too. Trump wanted to isolate Canada. Instead, he isolated himself. This is the strategic miscalculation that historians will write about. You don't make a $500 billion demand unless you're sure the other side will fold. And Trump was sure. He was sure because that's how it's always worked. He threatens. They cave. He declares victory. He moves on. But Carney broke the pattern. He snapped the playbook in half. And now Trump is standing in the wreckage of his own strategy, trying to figure out what went wrong. So let's talk about why Carney is different. Because this matters. Mark Carney is not a career politician. He didn't climb through party ranks. He didn't spend decades kissing babies and making promises. He ran central banks. He ran the Bank of Canada through the 2008 financial crisis, the only G7 country that didn't have a single bank failure. He ran the Bank of England through Brexit, arguably the most complex economic disruption in modern European history. This is a man who has sat across the table from the most powerful financial minds on earth and outmaneuvered them. He doesn't think in tweets, he thinks in systems. He doesn't react to threats. He models them, he runs the scenarios, he stress tests the outcomes, and then he acts. When Trump sent that $500 billion demand, Carney didn't panic. Sources close to the Prime Minister's office say he spent 4 hours in a closed room with his economic team. They modeled every possible US retaliation. They identified every pressure point. And then they built a response designed to do maximum strategic damage with minimum economic disruption to Canada. That's not politics, that's financial warfare. And Carney is better at it than anyone in the White House. Look at what he did tactically. He didn't announce sweeping, retaliatory tariffs. That would have spooked the Canadian markets. Instead, he announced strategic reciprocity measures targeting specific sectors in specific US states. He targeted bourbon from Kentucky, Mitch McConnell's backyard. He targeted agricultural equipment from Iowa. He targeted tech components from Texas. Every single target was chosen not for economic impact on Canada, but for political impact on Republican senators and congressmen. He's not fighting the US economy, he's fighting the Republican caucus. He knows that Trump can only sustain this confrontation if his party holds the line. So he's making it impossibly expensive for them to hold that line. Within 24 hours of the announcement, we saw 3 Republican senators issue statements calling for dialogue and de-escalation. That's Senate speak for Mr. President, you're killing us. Carney is picking apart Trump's coalition one district at a time, and he's doing it with a smile and a spreadsheet. Now here is where this gets really dangerous for the average American, because this isn't just a story about politicians and their egos. This is about your wallet. The $500 billion demand was supposed to make America richer. Instead, it's making everything more expensive. Let me walk you through the cascade. First, the tariff threat causes uncertainty. Uncertainty causes businesses to pause investment. Paused investment means fewer jobs, fewer expansions, fewer raises. Second, the energy price spike hits transportation costs. Everything you buy travels by truck. Trucks run on diesel. Diesel comes from crude oil, Canadian crude oil. When energy prices go up, shipping costs go up. When shipping costs go up, the price of everything on every shelf in every store in America goes up. Third, the auto sector disruption hits the heartland. The states that build cars, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, these are swing states. These are the voters Trump promised to protect. And they are the first ones who will feel the pain when parts stop flowing across the Ambassador Bridge. We're already hearing from plant managers in Detroit who say they have less than 2 weeks of inventory. 2 weeks after that, the lines stop, the workers go home, and the pink slips start. This is not hypothetical. This is happening right now. The clock is already ticking. And every hour that Trump and Carney stay locked in this standoff, the damage compounds. So where does this go? I see 3 possible paths. Path 1, the standoff. Trump imposes the tariffs. Carney retaliates with surgical precision. Both sides dig in. The border slows to a crawl. Prices rise. The economy wobbles. Eventually, after months of pain, corporate America forces a deal. Congress intervenes. Something gets patched together. It won't be pretty, but it'll stop the bleeding. This is the most likely scenario. Path 2, the spiral. Trump sees Carney's retaliation and loses his temper entirely. He invokes emergency powers. He tries to block Canadian energy imports. He threatens to pull the US out of NATO. He sends troops to the border as a show of force. Canada invokes emergency provisions with the EU and pivots its energy exports to Asia through the Trans Mountain Pipeline. This triggers a continental economic crisis. Gas hits $7 a gallon. The stock market drops 20%. We're talking about a full-blown recession triggered by one man's refusal to back down from a number he made up. It sounds extreme, but with this president, extreme is the baseline. Path 3, the quiet retreat. Someone in the White House, maybe the Treasury, Secretary, maybe a back-channel envoy, quietly reaches out to Ottawa. They negotiate a face-saving deal. Trump gets to claim he won something. Carney gets to keep Canada's sovereignty intact. Both sides declare victory. The markets calm down, and we all pretend this never happened. I want this to be the outcome, but I don't think Trump's ego allows for quiet retreats. He drew the line at $500 billion. He said it publicly. He said it repeatedly. Walking that back, even quietly, would require an admission. And Donald Trump does not admit fiction. He doubles down. He always doubles down. And that's what makes this moment so terrifying. We're watching two men play chicken with the largest bilateral trade relationship in human history. One of them is screaming and swerving and honking the horn. The other one has both hands on the wheel, eyes forward, cruise control set, and a stack of economic data on the passenger seat, telling him exactly how much road he has left. Carney knows the math. He knows Canada will take damage. He's accepted that. But he also knows that the United States will take more, because the US built its economy on the assumption that Canada would always be there. Cheap energy, reliable parts, open markets, stable neighbor. You take that away, and the American economic model doesn't just stumble, it breaks. That's the leverage Carney holds, and he knows exactly how to use it. So here is where we are. The $500 billion demand is on the table. Carney has publicly rejected it. The markets are in turmoil. The auto sector is panicking. Energy prices are spiking. Republican senators are sweating. European allies are rallying behind Ottawa. And the President of the United States is on social media calling the Prime Minister of Canada names. This is the state of the most important alliance in North American history. This is what happens when you treat your closest ally like a debtor. When you send an invoice to a sovereign nation and expect them to just pay it. Carney proved something yesterday that Washington hasn't heard in a very long time. No. One word, two letters, and it shook the most powerful government on earth. The question now isn't whether this will hurt. It will. The question is who bleeds more. And right now, the smart money, the real money, the institutional money, it's betting on Carney. Not because Canada is stronger, it's not. But because Carney is smarter, and in a fight between brute force and precision, precision wins every time. Do you think Trump will back down? Do you think Carney overplayed his hand? Or is this the moment the world finally realized that you can say no to America and survive? Drop your take in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to know what happens when the markets open tomorrow, and believe me, they will react violently to this, make sure you're subscribed and the notification bell is on, because this story is moving faster than anything I've covered in years. The $500 billion question is on the table, and the answer just changed everything. Don't blink.